So I'm sitting out here taking a break from work. Our office needs to get cleaned because of all this COVID stuff. So they're doing that right now. So I'm sitting outside taking a break, and I've made some crazy, not crazy, but I've made some connections to all of this racism, police brutality narrative that is dominating our world right now. And I don't even know if it's worth talking about because nobody seems to know or care about the truth anymore. But I'm going to throw this out and just see what people think. Um, and in order to get my head around this, um, I'm going to go back to the year 1994. I'll back up to 1992. And, what happened in 1992 that's relative to today's world. And if you haven't noticed, everything on TV right now is flashback to the 90s, whether it's The Last Dance, whether, go check out what's on 30 for 30, the Sammy Sosa, Mark McGuire thing coming up, the baseball strike. Everything they're talking about is right about that same time period. I don't believe in coincidences, right? Especially when it comes to Hollywood and Washington and what you're seeing on TV. It's all production, it's all produced, it's all thought out. Whether or not people have their head around that yet is up to you. Maybe you watch the TV and you think what you see is real, but it's being produced in a studio. They call it programming for a reason. Whether or not people have made that connection yet is up to them. And at this point, I'm exhausted of trying to help people see things that they don't see themselves. And then, how do you even tell somebody that they're programmed without them just attacking you? But, so going back to 1992, a couple of things. One, who was president? George Bush. Herbert Walker Bush, George W. Bush's dad, he was president. Who was Attorney General? Bill Barr, who's currently Attorney General. Bill Barr. What happened in 1992 that kind of mirrors what's happening right now? Rodney King, right? The LA race riots. What response did the federal government take? The Insurrection Act that just got reutilized by Donald Trump and by Bill Barr. How is that relevant to today's world? Well, I'm going to throw this out there for you. What you had was the LA police beating a man on camera. And up until that point, nothing like that had really been recorded. It hadn't been seen. So the cries from inner city communities of police aren't helping us, police are hurting us, they weren't believed. Right? And it was easy to just dismiss them as they're criminals, they're thugs. It's not true. But when you see it on camera of Rodney King getting beat by four white cops, and then all charges being dismissed, now you have rage and you have riots and you have Marines and you have Insurrection Act and you have all these things happening, right? What else happened in 1992? It was an election year. So what did you have? You had a Republican in George Bush who is now being called a racist, doesn't care about the black community, doesn't care about the inner city community, is in support of police brutality, all these things. Who's his opponent? Bill Clinton, who is actually a white guy from the South, but somehow gets this reputation of being great for the black community. And I'm laughing, and you may think, why am I laughing? I'll connect that. But so fast forward to 1994, and here's where I think people have got to start to understand the connection between media, politics, what you see on TV, programming. If you don't make the connection between all of those things, you will not understand what is happening in your world, and you will continue to be angry and frustrated and scream and yell and get nowhere because you don't understand the problem. I'm going to fill in some gaps. 1994, what is happening in a cultural standpoint? I'm going to give you some things that happened in pop culture, right? Let me just throw out some songs that came out in 1994. In April of 1994, Thuggish Ruggish Bone came out. I don't know if you guys remember that song. We're not against rap. We're not against rappers, but we are against those thugs. It's the Thuggish Ruggish Bone. Right? Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that song. But think about that. We're not against rap. We're not against rappers, but we are against those thugs. So that's playing in the background, right? What else happens in 1994? Biggie comes out with Ready to Die. What else happens? Warren G comes out with Regulators. Right? This is the music that's dominating the airwaves at those times. So, Nas comes out with Illmatic. So it's gangster culture. It's gangster culture. It's cool to be a gangster. It's cool to be a thug. That's the message in the background, right? Tupac is yelling thug life at this point, right? Did you guys know that Tupac Shakur is not even his real name? I didn't know that until I finally looked it up. And I can't think of off the top of my head what his real name is. But Tupac Shakur wasn't even his real name. And all of a sudden, this guy goes from, a poet, right? What was it? Rose blooming in concrete. I can't think of it right now, but look it up. But so Tupac's running around screaming thug life, right? Suge Knight is a gangster and he's taking over the rap industry. Sean Combs is a gangster, right? And these guys are taking over that medium. So that's what's being pumped out from a cultural standpoint. Is it's cool. It's cool to be a thug. It's cool to be a gangster. And I'm not saying that it's not, but it's important context to understand what's happening in your world and who's really trying to hurt people and who's really trying to enslave people and who's not. So I'll keep going. So all of those songs are playing in the background. And then what else is happening? Baseball goes on strike, right? And you have this whole thing of Sammy Sosa versus Mark McGwire and all, right? I don't even know if that was 1994. I can't remember the year. But so that's happening in the background. And then something very important happened right at this time of year in 1994 on June 17th, 1994. What happened? O.J. Simpson in a white Bronco going down the freeway, gun to his head, middle of the NBA Finals, NHL celebration. Arnold Palmer, who just happened to be in commercials with O.J. Simpson, is retiring. Right? I mean, what a perfect representation of the rich white guy than Arnold Palmer. O.J. Simpson is getting arrested for killing his white wife, and you have to have some context around who O.J. Simpson was, who he was to the black community, who he was to the white community. He's a rich guy. Where did he move to? Right? So what did he symbolize for both of those communities? You have to put this stuff in context, and then all of a sudden, O.J.'s arrested. So you have all this stuff playing in the background of thug life is cool, gangster life is cool. You have the whole Rodney King thing still sort of marinating of police brutality and all these things. You have the Juice is Loose Starburst commercials, which started in 1993, right? The juice is loose. And then all of a sudden, Juice gets arrested for killing his white wife. What better message, what better way to send the message that white people need to be afraid of black people coming into their community? Just a theory, but what better way to do it? So now, what do you have? Gangster culture is cool. Thug culture is cool. White people should be afraid of black people coming into their community. So you have all this, right? That's the cultural message being pumped out. The juice is loose. That's the cultural message. And then what happens in September of 1994? Bill Clinton signs into law the bill that Joe Biden wrote that is basically the source of systemic racism within modern systemic racism within the police department. It allowed for police overreach. It allowed for maximum sentencing. Just look into the 1994 crime bill and see all the nonsense that was in there. Make those connections. See the damage that's been done. Listen to the things that Joe Biden was saying in 1994. Listen to the things that Bill Clinton was saying in 1994. Listen to those things. And then listen to the cultural message behind it of it's cool to be a thug. It's cool to be a gangster. We need law and order. We don't care what happened in these people's communities. All we care about is if they have a gun pointed at our grandma. Listen to Joe Biden's words when he's talking about that bill. And and then listen to what was dominating the airwaves on June 17th of 1994. And it didn't stop on that day, June 18th, June 19th, Juneteenth, right? Now everybody knows what Juneteenth is. Did you know before Donald Trump tweeted about it? People are going to say, oh yeah, I knew. You didn't know. You didn't know. And now you're calling him a racist. And you're calling his supporters a racist. And you're voting for the guy who literally wrote the crime bill. And I'm putting this out there because tomorrow there's going to be massive, massive protest celebrations, Juneteenth, and people are going to pay attention to it. But I'm asking you, did you know what it was before Donald Trump tweeted about it? And I don't care about Donald Trump. I don't care about Donald Trump. But I do care about eradicating hate. I do care about ending systematic inequality. I do care about ending mandatory prison sentences and 3 strike laws and police brutality and these military cops. I care about ending all that shit. But if you honestly don't understand who's on what side, you're going to be on the wrong side of the fight. You've been on the wrong side of the fight. You've been on the wrong side of the fight your whole life. I promise you. Without even knowing it. Look into this stuff and think. Stop listening to the news. If you really want things to change, you have to understand the source of the problem. And this is the biggest con. The Democrat Party is the biggest con that's ever been perpetrated on people in the history of the world. It's a con. It's a con. And they're blaming their opponents for doing exactly what they are doing, which is writing bills that create systematic racism, writing bills that overfund police departments and militarize police departments, and then giving them authorization to run wild in enforcing these laws. I'm sure I missed a million things. I'm sure I missed so much context, and I definitely left a lot of things to have to go Google search and all that stuff. But look into it, and if you still don't understand who's who and who's on what side, you're going to be lost, and we're going to stay lost.